upright position, remove dentures and loose jewelry, get comfortable, take a deep breath, and come along for the ride. It is time for the Joe Mangiacotti Show on Powerhouse Station WCRN 830, and our affiliates and streaming on the TuneIn app. It's Joe time, baby.
All right, folks, good morning and welcome to the Saturday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show, the first Saturday of December. That's it, folks, counting down to the end of 2021. Quick year. I don't know about you. It just really flew by. Must be a lot of things going on. But then, of course, there's times where it feels like we've been stuck in the Biden administration for years on end. 508-871-7000 is joining the conversation from the Boxtrot Middlesex Mattress Outlet Studios. I'm Joe Mangiacotti, and this is the Joe Mangiacotti Show. Saturday and Sunday mornings, we kick off at 6 o'clock, Mondays at 1 o'clock. You can check us out online at tjmshow.com. Follow us on our social media platforms at Joe Mangi Show, M-A-N-G-I, Joe Mangi Show. You can listen, of course, to the radio stations, AM 830, AM 730. You can listen to us on the TuneIn app where we're live streaming, or the WCRN station site. You can also tell Alexa to play WCRN. She'll do that with no questions asked. Like I said, Joe Mangi is the handle for a social media platform. So that means you can also watch the show. There is a camera in studio, so you can watch the streaming, and more importantly, you can get the audio on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. On my LinkedIn page it will go to, which is cool, my YouTube page, the Joe Mangiacotti Show, and even Stitch TV. So you've got 5 platforms to watch the show and listen to the show, in addition to all of the audio platforms. You can reach out to the show off air. Some of you like to send things in or ask questions. You can email us at joemshow@gmail.com. Call the office at 508-603-9778. And you can always use Messenger and Facebook, which seems to be the most popular method of doing it. So that's fine with me. To get a hold of us here for two-way talk and conversation as we broadcast from our palatial but not overly ostentatious studios in Westboro, Massachusetts, 508-871-7000, 508-871-7000. We have a text line up and running, which is simple. Text us in real time like you would anybody at 617-297-8388. You can also email textjoe on the radio at gmail.com. It appears on the same screen in studio, as I said, in real time. One way to communicate with us while we're on the air. Now, being the first Saturday of the month, that means at 7 o'clock, State Senator Mike Moore joins us in studio, who will be able to give us a little access to Beacon Hill. That's right. Every Saturday, or I should say every first Saturday of the month, Senator Moore joins us for Politically Speaking from 7 to 8, where we can ask him what is going on Beacon Hill. What were you guys thinking? That tends to be the attitude we take around here. But you'll be able to actually call in and join the conversation. So if you have anything for the good senator, please feel free to schedule that for the next hour. Good morning, Russ. How are you, sir?
Good morning, Joe. How are you?
I am good. I'm good. You know, another week where can't turn the news stations off in the office or in the studio while I'm working. Just too much going on. Able to listen to the Supreme Court, hear this Mississippi argument on abortion and what's going to happen there. They didn't have a camera. They never have a camera in the Supreme Court. I don't think they do. But they ran the audio, so it was interesting. I always get a kick out of listening to the justices and the questions they ask, and you got to remind yourself, and if you guys who are listening to me right now don't have never heard the Supreme Court have somebody in front of them, and that's where they called arguing, where they're arguing with the Supreme Court. You can't get fooled by the questions that the justices are asking, because you don't know where they're coming from. Sometimes they're playing devil's advocate, and sometimes they're really, they're just trying to poke holes. So just because they're asking questions, you might think, oh my goodness, obviously the justice is leaning this way. No, don't fall into that trap. It doesn't mean that at all. But we could wait as long as, until June for them to come out. So Don't hold your breath on that. But it was interesting to listen to that. Of course, we had another trial kick off this week, which is the Jesse Smollett, and I'm going to get into that because this case and this guy bothers me so much, so much. So we're going to talk about that. We'll try to get as much as we can in before the senator joins us at 7:00. But one thing I wanted to point out is this: there's a lot of rumbling going on between the president's office, the vice president's office. You have to wonder who's behind the leaks, who's behind the little jabs and all that kind of stuff that's going on. And then something got leaked and it came out and went away fast, folks. And that was Joe Biden nominating Kamala Harris for the Supreme Court. I'll give you a second while you chuckle. But if you got to get rid of a VP and you got to save face and not insult her too much, maybe you do something like that. Now, the problem is she is so not qualified for the Supreme Court. These justices are people who have spent their entire career on benches in the appellate court in scholarly positions where they've legitimately argued the merits of legal points over and over again. It's just not where she belongs. But that got leaked very quickly, and then it kind of went away. So now you're wondering, so are they trying to figure out how to not have her on the ticket in 2024 or not even be a candidate for a front runner? So now Pete Buttigieg is kind of the name being thrown around. Secretary of Transportation. Yeah. The guy who disappeared for 2 months in the middle of a supply chain, i.e. transportation crisis in the United States. And no problem. I understand maternity leaves and all that kind of thing. But I go back to what I originally talked about this, folks, is you decide to run for president, vice president. You take a job as secretary of anything or any of these major jobs, Speaker of the House, minority leader, majority leader. It doesn't matter. You've got to understand, if you're not willing to say that the people own me for the next term that I'm here, you have to think about the job. I mean, it's just part of the package that goes with this. So now there's this dynamic between Vice President Kamala Harris, she's 57, Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, who is 39, and do we get rid of Kamala and get Pete on the ticket and he runs 24 as the front-runner candidate for the Democrats, or is the ticket reversed? Well, the interesting thing is, so they met in person, coming off the plane or something. I don't know where they were. But the point is there's significant debate is waging here between Harris's future at the White House, and she has so many of departures, right, from her staff. People are leaving. But this isn't new. Let's remember back to when she was a candidate, right? We heard all the stories about how difficult she was to work for. She had a big turnover in her Senate office and her prosecutor's office. But we had people reading into the body language. If someone other than Joe Biden is to run in 2024, it seems more like Buttigieg would be running mate to Harris, but not on the top of the ticket. And there's a gentleman named Scott Rouse. He's a Nashville-based body language expert. Apparently, he's worked with Secret Service, FBI, CIA. He advises special forces how to size up enemies and potential threats, right? This is his training. And the government has a lot of people, right? Linguistics people who can just analyze your stress level by your voice, can figure out if you're lying by a conversation. That movie, Meet the Fockers, right? That whole thing, right? That character that Munchkin Gennaro there plays is that he's a human lie detector for the CIA. So these are real people and real jobs that they have. And so Business Insider, in an in-depth review of Harris and Buttigieg's interactions this week, including this hug that they had Tuesday morning when they met at Joint Base Andrews at the same time on the tarmac. So he says that her feet are pointed toward him, whereas his are sort of spread a little bit apart. But if his left foot is pointing just a little bit away from her, when you want to focus on a person or a thing in the room or in your surroundings, your feet will point toward that person. It seems a little bit ill-ease because his back in, she's leaning forward. So he's leaning back, she's leaning forward a little bit. And this guy, Russ, says that if you're really happy to see someone, you're going to step right up to them and hug them and pull them toward you. He's trying to make a space from her where he's a little bit more into it than, where she's a little bit more into it than he is. Now, the report also noted that Harris sat in the driver's seat at an all-electric bus depot while Buttigieg looked on with his hand in his pocket. I don't know. He went on to say her eyes are wide open. She's looking right at him. You can tell she's not very comfortable in the seat. And Russ went on to say she's kind of like a child there. But let's take a look at him. So if you look, again, let's take a look at the feet. Neither one of his feet are pointed toward her. One is pointed toward the door a little bit. I'm not an expert here, but maybe he's want to run out of there. I don't know. The main thing we're seeing here in his hand in his pocket. So we're back to the hand in the pocket. When you see someone with their hands in their pocket and you don't see them or their thumbs, that shows that they don't feel dominant in the situation. I don't know, folks. Anybody, Russ, you buying into any of this? You believe any of this body language thing, or is this just filling some print space?
Yeah, I'm kind of lost. I mean, I'm just being honest, and I'm sure
right.
I'm sure you could probably tell from looking at me anyway that you can see a question mark over my head.
So the thing is, so they met Tuesday. Everybody's reading into the body language, and this happened a lot during the Trump campaign, right? They were always talking about Trump walking down the platform, or how he drank his water and held his tie and all of that. But we don't get any. Mainstream media isn't going to examine Joe Biden's old man shuffle, or when he stood there, for how many minutes with those fists clutched, and none of that. So nobody wants to talk about clear, obvious neurological indicators with Joe Biden, but they were all over Trump. But anyway, the body language, Buttigieg versus Vice President Harris, interesting. We'll see where that goes. I don't know. The other thing, so I got to tell you, well, actually, before we get into this, I'm going to plan on talking a little bit more about this, and probably have to do it tomorrow. But the shooting that took place at Oxford High School, again, tragic, right? And this is interesting. We're going to tie in some of the response about this shooting, because every time there's a shooting, it's gun control, gun control, gun control. And in this case, it's very interesting because the prosecutor is doing something that people have talked about or suggested in the past. She has charged the parents as well. And they were kind of on the run yesterday. They are in custody now, right? The car was found somewhere and they were in the house. And now that somebody who was helping them might even be charged. This segment isn't about getting into this. I want to do this in a more official segment later. But what I want to say is forget the Ethan kid who did this and blaming the gun, just like the SUV drove into the Christmas parade. The SUV murdered people and mowed them down. The truck did, not the POS behind the wheel. No, this is a whole nother discussion where it seems the left always transfers the responsibility onto inanimate objects, which also brings us to Alex Baldwin and his interview with little Steffi Stephanopoulos who, if you're a listener to the show at any length of time, you know what I feel about that mental midget. Unbelievable. He was, and if you don't know why I have such a problem with him, is you got to go all the way back to the Clinton days when this little, POS was actually in charge of the bimbo squad with Hillary, who were going after the women that Clinton assaulted as governor. And there was a tape released once that a staffer recorded, but they could only record his side of the conversation, not the woman he was talking to. And he was horrible, telling her that she's nothing. Who is she? You really want to go up against these people? They always win. Do you want a friend? Do you really want to do this and destroy your life? Or would you rather have a friend? If you keep your mouth shut, you're going to have a friend. Don't you want to have Bill and Hillary as a friend? This is the way he talked to them. So I've never could tolerate Steffi Stephanopoulos. And I think the fact that he's in the position he's in, by virtue of just the position, it demands and automatically gets a certain amount of respect and dignity, which he doesn't possess anywhere in his body. But before we do go into the whole Oxford school shooting, I want to point out there are 4 teenagers, right? 14, 16, and 16, and 17, who were killed by this kid. And the thing about this is not like there weren't any signs, people. There were tons of signs, including the teacher finding him searching for ammunition on his cell phone during class. Then another teacher finding drawings and paper on his desk with disturbing pictures, and he's literally writing out, "The voices won't stop. Help me, please help me." That prompted a meeting with the parents to come to the school to talk about it, with him there, and he has a knapsack. This is the day he shot up, folks. He never left the school. He went from this meeting. They told him to go back to class. And a couple hours later, he comes out of the bathroom and he just starts point blank shooting people. With these kind of warnings, they didn't check the backpack. They didn't send him home. Why was he even allowed to stay at the school? He should have gone right to therapy. But the point is, and I don't want this kid's name to be forgotten, Tate Meyer, a 16-year-old in the school, a football player, right? And he charged. This is going to be cut to in a second here, Russ. He gave his life to save classmates at the Oxford High School shooting. He was shot in an attempt to disarm the gunman. He died on the way to the hospital in the patrol car. Now, he died a hero. And I don't really care if you know the shooter's name or anything about that person. He's very disturbed. But make sure that Tate's story is told and you know who he is. And not that he had an interview or anything. He was a football player. He was good. And there is a clip. This is him. Someone just grabbing like an iPhone, on the football field, the winning games. And I'm going to play it just because I think it gives you a sense of this kid. He's 16 years old. He's having the time of his life, going to school, playing football, and this kid had a wonderful life ahead of him, because you can tell just by his persona, his personality, he was going to be something special. Let's play cut 2. This is just him talking on the football field.
Man, it feels awesome. I mean, it feels great. We haven't been to playoffs since my freshman year. No, we weren't even in it my freshman year. My brother's senior year, so 2018. It just feels great. But in the rain, this is where we live. Rain is just like Oxford football, tough, muddy. Everything about us is tough. Started off the season rough, 0-3. We didn't quit. We came back. We grinded, worked every day. We had trust each other. We all love each other. And we just started building there week by week by week. And here we are beating Clarkson week 1, and we're hoping to do more. So I play tight end, a little bit of running back and linebacker. I make most calls on defense, so I have a big role on defense. But yeah, Mike linebacker is probably the biggest part of our defense, and glad I can.
Your coach is about to talk to you guys. I'm gonna let you go, but hey, what a great win for
Thank you.
Wow. That's him, Tate Meyer, 16 years old, a hero. The shooting started, and without even thinking about it, he charged the gunman to save his fellow classmates, to do something. He didn't run, he didn't hide, and I am not suggesting that 16-year-olds should be a hero and jump into this. That's what you should do. Run, hide, get out of it. This Ethan kid even tried to pretend to be a deputy sheriff, knocking on the doors saying, sheriff, all set, open up. And they didn't fall for it for two reasons. One is they could tell it was him. But more importantly is there was training in the school. And the training in the school, that's not what sheriff's deputies are going to say. So they kind of have a code phrase that they're taught, that this is what will be said, so it's a real deputy. But then I think about that and say, but this is a student, and the school doesn't get the same training. So I don't know how that works. But that's the reason that was given, that they knew it wasn't a real deputy, because he was just saying, all safe, okay, come on out. Deputy. Tate Meyer, a hero and a great loss, not to just his family and friends, but I think to us, I think he would have been someone that was great for our society. All right, 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. That is 508-871-7000. And our text line is 617-297-8388. State Senator Mike Moore joins us at the top of the hour at 7 o'clock for Politically Speaking. So Jesse Smollett trial. Legal expert says guilty verdict is highly probable because of strong evidence. No kidding. Look, this guy is horrible. He's a bad human being. I hope that he gets both incarceration time, and they charge him and send him a bill for the amount, the money, the man hours and the cost in this hoax investigation. Now, what I did, in my opinion, what he did is worse than a hate crime, in the sense that a hate crime, and by the way, what is that? So, define that, because I think people can call a lot of things hate crimes when they're just a crime. But this is a guy who's so greedy, right? He wanted to do several things at the same time, somehow up his profile. Well, you did that, you idiot. And to negotiate a better deal for his appearance on Empire, the TV show that he played in. And he wanted to, at the same time, create division between races and somehow go after Trump. In an interview, he said, I went after 45 hard. You're a pittance. You're nothing to 45. So this is ridiculous. And the fact that so many on the left jumped on board before any facts were in, and the facts that were in were beyond suspicious. Right? They made no sense. You got a guy making $2 million a year as an actor, living in this nice 5-star hotel in downtown Chicago, and it's 0 degrees out, and he decides he wants a Subway sandwich. There isn't a Subway sandwich it's so good that I would venture out at 2 o'clock in the morning with 0 degree temperature to get a sub. When I'm in a 5-star hotel and I can pick up the phone and have whatever the hell I want delivered up to my room. So he's supposedly walking the streets at 2 a.m. And two guys approach him with mega hats on and saying, assaulting him to say it's mega country. And they put bleach on him. They punch him in the face. They put a noose around his neck. This is all what he's saying. And don't forget, Chicago, a place that Hillary Clinton took by 83 points. So I wouldn't call this the heart of mega country, downtown Chicago. So this is the story. But let us review the stupidity that led up to this. And we're going to have to do it on the other side because we're going to take a quick break here on the bottom of the hour on the Saturday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show. Don't forget, Senator Mike Moore joins us at 7 o'clock. Meanwhile, you can text the show at 617-297-8388, 617-237-8388. And, of course, lines are open and available at 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. I'll pick it up with Jesse Smollett and some of the just the stupidity there, as well as the fact that when this broke out, just the garbage that came out of all the talking heads on the left. We'll listen to a little bit of that as well. All right, I'm Joe Mangiacotti. Stick with us here in the Joe Mangiacotti Show. Back in just a moment.
It's time to go out with Joe.
Welcome to this week's edition of Out with Joe, brought to you by Levante's Auto School with 5 locations. Click Levante's Auto School to find one near you. I'm Joe Mangiacotti. This week, the best recipes for Christmas appetizers to make ahead. That's right, Christmas is a time to eat, drink, and be merry. And the festive season sees family kitchens all over the world working overtime to create dishes after dish after dish of tempting seasonal delights. But while it can be fun to cook for the people you love, nobody wants to spend Christmas hiding in the kitchen. And make ahead and pre-prepared dishes can be an absolute godsend at this time of year. Appetizer recipes are often particularly well suited to making ahead. And because they're small and compact, they can be stored in the refrigerator without taking up all that valuable space. Many can also be used as canapes and finger food for parties and buffets. So you can make a big selection a few days earlier, bring them all out later for a completely stress-free party. If you're looking for some recipe inspiration, we've got you covered with 10 of the best make-ahead Christmas appetizers you can think of. This includes delicious little bites like roast pork and cranberry jelly Christmas canapé, big stuffed mushrooms, canapé with salmon, crab meat, and caviar, lobster roll bites, olive puffs, brie and fig puffed pastry bites, cheddar and onion cheese ball, sweet corn fritters, and one of my favorite, fried deviled eggs, just to name a few. These recipes and more can be found on outwithjoe.com with the link over to finedininglovers.com, where they can also link you over to some great pre-made Italian flair recipes. So for more on this posting and the complete article, click outwithjoe.com. We have suspended the Music Minute for the time being. Please support your local musicians. We do. Follow us on our social media platforms at Out With Joe. Out With Joe has been brought to you by Levante's Auto School with 5 locations, one near you.
This is Sean Burke, president of the Licensed Private Detectives Association of Massachusetts, asking you to visit us at lpdam.org when you think you need a private investigator. Don't let your emotions negatively affect your future. Get your answers through a Massachusetts licensed private investigator. Get the facts without risking your credibility by unknowingly committing a criminal offense. You need a license to perform investigations in Massachusetts. What are some types of work that requires a license? Any type of surveillance, interviewing someone for a third party, background and asset checks are just a few examples. For more on this, visit us at lpdm.org and tune into AM 830 WCRN Sunday mornings at 7:30 for case files from the LPDM or anytime at lpdmcasefiles.com.
I want to tell you what Cantiani Insurance has been able to do for me and Teddy. We stopped in to see Paul Sr. and the great staff at 318 Plantation Street. They've been handling my car and business insurance for years. Teddy was making his way around the office, and they let me know. They now offer pet insurance. For a fraction of what one visit to the vet was for Teddy, they could cover him for a whole year. I know you treat your furry family members like any other family member, and as well as I do Teddy. The professional staff at Cantiani Attorneys has been providing courteous service for over 40 years with integrity and personalized service, making sure that your insurance actually protects you and your family. With 2 locations, the 318 Plantation Street in Worcester and East Douglas Insurance Agency, located at 306 Main Street in Douglas. For home, auto, business insurance, and now pet insurance, click CantianiAgency.com or call 508-791-2088. 508-791-2088.
We know why you're awake. Your child is about to get their driver's license. Levante's Auto School offers 1-week driving programs to help make sure your child stays safe and focused behind the wheel.
877 Drive Ed. Who's Ed? That's the number for Levante's Auto School.
Learn to drive safely and efficiently. Visit one of our 5 locations throughout Massachusetts. Click Levante'sAutoSchool.com.
Levante's Auto School shows you how to learn the rules and keep your cool. 877 Drive Ed. Who's Ed? That's the number for Levante's Auto School.
All right, welcome back. Welcome back to the second half of the first hour, the Saturday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show on AM 830, WCRN. You saw that, Russ. We had to do a Teddy adjustment here.
Is he being a good boy this morning?
He is being a good boy, but if you're watching online, you're going to see that we just moved him for, 7 years or something. He's been perfectly fine, always sitting in the chair to my right, no problem, curl right up there. And this has been his thing for the last month or two, is he needs to now be up on the console. Up on the console.
Maybe he wants to host his own show. I don't know.
Maybe he does, but so we readjusted Teddy. I think now if you're watching online, you can see him by the computer. No problem. He's not in the way. It's all good. All right, folks, 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. Lines are open and available as we broadcast from our palatial but not overly ostentatious studios high atop the Carberry Towers in Westboro, Massachusetts. 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. This is the Joe Mangiacotti Show. And don't forget to follow us on all of our social media platforms at Joe Mangi Show, M-A-N-G-I. And we're live streaming on Facebook, not Instagram, I think that connects to Instagram. So Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube channel, and even Stitch TV. All right. I was talking about this Jesse Millett situation. So the evidence here is unbelievable because in the racial overtones that are in this situation, this guy wanted to capitalize on what was already a hot delicate racial tension in the country, and he wanted to drive a wedge right through it. So he orchestrates this entire bull mega attack, and it's so lame when you really think about it. Meanwhile, he engages the services of these 2 Nigerian bodybuilders. From all outwards appearances that I can see in the news and interviews, these seem to be like 2 decent guys who got wrapped up into this. And apparently, according to testimony and evidence being put forth, is they had actually, applied for a legitimate job in security for this guy. And he used that as part of the hook that if they do this for him, not only is he going to pay them $3,500, which isn't a small chunk of change by any means, but it is also, to a guy making $2 million a year, I don't know how much money that really is, right? But the point is, he writes him a check. Did he put in the memo, racial hoax? I don't know. And then the promise of getting that security job, if he does all of this, he does a dry run. Unbelievable. This guy wanted to kill multiple birds with this one stone. 508-871-7000. Let me get into some phone calls are on waiting. I don't know if they're all connected to this story, but we can take a quick phone call or two. Let me go to the phones. Ken and Bolton first. You're the first one up on the screen here, Ken. Good morning. You look marvelous.
Thank you, Joe. And hello again, Patriots.
Hello, Patriots.
What
a week.
Good news.
What a week.
Where do you start? I wanted to cross over in preparation to the state senator, talk about state politics and
the open seat,
the wide open governor's race.
And this is an open seat, right? You got a Republican governor, held it for 2 terms. So Democrats haven't, they did. I think, Ken, they knew they weren't going to take it last time. So now this is really an open seat, and they're scrambling. I think we have 3 official people who put their hat in the ring?
But we know who's going to be the candidate, almost certainly.
What, you thinking, Maura Healey?
Yeah.
Which would be so horrible for the state, folks.
Well, here's why I bring up the topic. Not only, it means a lot to everybody that's a citizen, is this is a massive crossroads for this state. They can go in 2 very different directions. Unfortunately, more likely in the direction we don't want to go, as you're precluding to. But how do we get here, and how do we take advantage of the fact that we still have an opportunity, potentially first in our lifetime, to actually elect a conservative governor?
You talking about Jeff Deal?
I think there's a greater possibility, but there's, so if you have anything on the grapevine, tell us what's going on in state politics, having once run for state senate, by all means, I'm all ears.
Yeah. Jeff is a good guy, and he would be great as a governor. And if you're listening to us right now and you don't remember Jeff, he did run for Senate, but he was a state rep, and he was the guy behind stopping that stupid gas automatic tax stuff. And so he mobilized grassroots, boots on the ground. Like he did it, right? Governorship. It's an uphill battle for the guy. Because you've got Boston and Cambridge, right? You've got these cities, these liberal havens that if he can't make inroads and get some support in those liberal havens that are densely populated, Ken, he won't be able to pull it off. And unlike Baker, I don't think he's perceived as a reasonable, middle of the road, will go along with the Dems. And let's face it, Baker has, he's done things that didn't sit well with the Republicans in the state, right?
Well, that's just it. It's such a weird situation, Massachusetts. I mean, they're supposed to be so deep blue, and yes, the people that are sent to Washington, D.C. are extremely liberal left or leftist, or however you want to describe it. And yet 23 of the past 31 years have had a Republican governor. How do you square those 2?
Well, I think that as a whole, right, the electorate is not, you have the individual people who peel off and that kind of thing, but as a whole, I think it acts as an entity, in the sense that, and we see this countrywide too sometimes, that we tend to have a self-correcting ability here from time to time. And I think somehow the electorate just knows that we need to balance the overwhelming Democratic majority in the legislature, that it throws us a Republican governor from time to time just to try to keep us somewhat on an even keel.
To time, we've had 5 Republican governors over this period of time. It's sort of like, Deal doesn't fit the prototype of the 5 that we've had.
No, that's what I'm saying.
So here's my first question: have you heard any rustling about, somebody out of the blue challenging Deal?
No, I haven't, and I would like to hear about it, folks. If anybody knows, it's not like you don't know how to reach me. I would love to hear about it.
Yeah, here it is. Somebody that's attuned to state politics hasn't heard of anybody, and it's less than 11 months, or about 11 months,
right,
from when the election is going to occur.
Right.
I don't see this happening. Somebody coming out of blue, because first off, given the profile of the state itself, if you're not well known in the state, you probably don't have a chance as a Republican nominee.
Exactly.
So at least Deal is known. And now we have this massive wind behind our backs. So, you know what, folks? Here's your opportunity. You know, you may have never thought you'd ever see a conservative governor in
Well, here's the thing.
But it's possible.
We have a little bit of what 1990 was, and that is that very anti-incumbent thing, and they're not doing a good job. But see, that's a national, right? We have that. We're very frustrated with the federal level of legislation and legislators. Meanwhile, things are actually pretty good in Massachusetts economically, right? So there isn't
well, that's comparative to the other very liberal states in the West.
Well, exactly. So there isn't that, because in 1990, that was the year Bill Weld and Paul Cellucci were swept in. And I do mean, boy, they were swept in. And also, that was the year that the state Senate elected several Republican state senators, which just didn't happen for like 40 years. And they had, I think, 17, which was enough to hold a veto. So it's just, I wouldn't compare it to 1990, but we do have we do have some wind on the back, in the sense that we're very frustrated with the current state of affairs. That gas is, a year ago, I think it was paying $1.89 or something, right? I filled up one of the cars the other day, and I think it was like $4.21 or $4.29 or something. You're going to, I was just doing an interview with somebody yesterday, and talking off air. We're talking about grocery shopping, and how chips a little while ago it was 2 bags for $4, and now it's 2 bags for $7, and that happened in about 12 to 15 months. Everything is up across the board, right? I know Jen Psaki gets up there and tries to tell us no big deal. So the turkey's $1 more. Well, it's not $1 more. So there is this frustration. We don't like what's going on, but is that going to translate to the state level, Ken, opposed to being frustrated with the federal level?
Yeah, and you reviewed the Weld-Cellucci situation. So Weld, at the time in 1990, was perceived as more liberal than the Democrat candidate.
He's a libertarian, really, right? I mean, he was actually the presidential, right, for the Libertarian Party at one point.
Right.
Yeah.
In 2016.
Yeah.
So getting back to, we have this weird group that makes up about 30 to 40% of the electorate, I think, who are liberal tightwads. You know what I mean by that? What I mean by that is, fine, sure, you guys go to Washington, you spend like crazy, and then put that bill on everybody else.
Did you say tightwad? No, I didn't catch the word you used.
Liberal tightwad.
Oh, you did say tightwad.
That when it comes to actually spending in the state and local, I don't want to.
Right.
So that's how we end up in one extreme. It's like, I'll get the wild liberals sending them to Washington. But around here, let's see. Let's not go too far down.
But do you ever really hear an incumbent member of the legislature ever say, "Whoa, we don't need to spend. Stop"? I mean, it's as if once they get there and they're on Beacon Hill or the Capitol Hill, the concept of it's not your money doesn't even play a factor anymore. It's like, this is how we manage. We fix things with money. We put money here, we put money there, we just spend. And I don't really hear anybody who's an incumbent ever say, let's put the brakes on this. Well, actually, one federal person did, right, with the McCarthy saying, hey, and even Joe Manchin said, look, the inflation's out of control. I'll go for this Build Back Better bill, but not today. Why don't we let the dust settle? And if you're telling us, Janet Yellen is telling us that it's going to ease by the second quarter of 2022, well, why don't we revisit then, right? Printing more money and throwing more money out there, another trillions of dollars, is only going to cause more inflation and hurt. And again, Biden does not understand when he talks about the middle class and the poor people that we out there, the paycheck to paycheck people. Inflation is a killer for us. It can be absorbed by wealthy people. It's not such a big deal, but it absolutely hurts the middle class folks. Why can't you get that? Get it under control. But their end result here, Ken, is they've got to push us through this pain. They think they have to instill this pain on us so that we get in line, we buy into the Green New Deal stuff, we get electric cars, and we become like them in their attitude on the world. And this is what they're going to do. And if they have to hurt us in the process, so be it. Just what
And
we
all
have to
that's
do.
happening at the national level. I just think there's a different think at the state level. The voters literally, you would think they would have the same application, but they don't. So I think there's a massive group of people who are like, well, yeah, I'm liberal, but yeah, I want to have a little check on that.
Yeah.
And so you have callers who are very liberal who say, oh, yeah, I'm for Baker. You know, like,
yep. Yeah.
What? So what are those voters going to do this time around?
Yeah.
When there's going to be a massive push further to the left.
Yeah.
We're seeing it in the city of Worcester. It's nuts. They literally question some spending and that's racist. How dare you?
Oh my
That's
God.
a dog whistle. It's like, what?
I can't even get into
on the
those
left side,
conversations. They're so beyond ridiculous. But I'll tell you what, Senator Moore is going to be in studio in a matter of minutes, and we'll ask him what his take on the open governor seat. But I've got phone calls lined up here, Ken, so I got to hold you there. Thanks for the call. Always appreciate it. 508-871-7000 to join the conversation, folks, on the Joe Mangiacotti Show. Don't forget to follow us at Joe Mangi Show on our social media platforms. Roger in Worcester. Good morning, Roger.
Good morning. Thank you, WCRN and former station of the Cross Radio. We're growing too. We got 7 stations. Appreciate all your work. As you know, the bill, state bill H4141 is still on, and it's sponsored by, we need co-sponsors. It's being helped by Guy Albertini of Groton. If we can get more co-signers, like your Senator Moore, to co-sign it, we can get that
all right, well,
voter ID laws on.
All right, tell listeners what the bill does, what it says, and what it's for, so they understand what you're talking about.
Well, H4141 is a bill that we did. We a couple of young people, Mr. worked so hard to get it on the state docket, on the state legislature. It will start an election reform to stop all this illegal vote counting or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It will get, especially you walk into a precinct, you show your ID, show your legal license and stuff like that.
Okay, so it basically requires voter ID at the ballot box.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
And we can get it passed. All we need is people like your Senator Moore to co-sign it and have the guts to stand up and just co-sign it like he does with all the other liberal bills. Just co-sign it.
I see.
Remember,
well, he's
you mentioned,
I mean, actually, he's in the station. I don't know if he wants to jump on or not. Senator Moore, if you want to come on in, but that's he's an independent guy that will make those decisions on himself. And he does officially join us at 7:00 for Politically Speaking, but he's in station, so I'm going to ask him to grab a microphone and a headset. And did you catch this conversation?
ID.
Yeah, so Roger from Worcester's calling about Bill 4141
H4141.
H4141, which in essence requires voter ID at the ballot box. Do you know about this?
What's his name again?
This is Roger from Worcester.
No, I don't. There's 6,500 bills filed until.
That's it.
Until
so you've read every one of them, right?
Yeah. Until committees start releasing everything. So Roger, I know it's voter ID, but does it mandate what type of ID it has to be?
Yes, the legal ID, like I always thought, to show your life.
So any state ID, a driver's license, a mass state ID. What about like a college ID or an EBT card? Are they counted?
We know, but it's got to be legal showing. So illegals can't get in there. But showing that
But Roger, I think one state, Connecticut, several years ago, they passed something that allowed people, if they don't have an ID, that allowed them to use like the utility bills from their address.
As long as it matches up with the voter ID
Right.
registration. Okay.
Right, but it's going to be something to confirm their address. We had this vote, I want to say 10 years ago when I first got in the legislature. One problem we had is that one of the biggest groups that opposed this type of legislation were senior advocacy groups, because we have a lot of seniors who may not have their driver's license anymore. So this was an issue that we discussed on. And I don't have a problem with an ID as long as we have a system that everyone has access to that ID.
Right.
So that would be the issue.
But when you lose not lose, or you give up your driver's license, or your family kind of makes you, and that's usually what the case is, right? Because I know my father, he just wasn't going to give up his driver's license. So my sister had an accident with the car, and we just never replaced it.
Okay.
But the point is, once you turn into a driver's, you just replace it with a state issued ID. And it's not a big deal.
Well, you can, but you'd have to start the process. Until now, there's not a voter ID requirement. A clerk at the city elections or town elections, they can ask someone for an ID if they have reason to believe that someone's committing a fraud. But right now, the big issue that when this issue came up many years ago was how do we ensure that everyone gets access to having an ID?
Right.
And again, one of the biggest groups that opposed the bill at the time were a lot of senior groups.
Right. Well, I don't think this should be a problem, Roger and Senator, because we're throwing trillions of dollars around like Skittles at a party. I don't think it's a big thing to say, we the taxpayers will cover the $4.83 it costs to eliminate an ID for you. I mean, I think that argument's weak. The cost of it.
We have a movement going, the 200 million member movement that put in President Trump and 300 Christian federal judges is still alive. We have small groups all over the state. We're the ones in Holyoke that shut down the veterans home for killing people, and we couldn't get that guy fired because the state reps and senators didn't do anything, but we got him out of his job because he's a political hack. See, we have groups in Chatham and in Worcester and Spencer. We're still alive.
You say we have a group? Is there a name to the group, Roger? What do you call the?
No, after the election, we started to meet up in small groups, civic groups, because remember we were locked down for a year, so people wanted to find out what's going on. We listen. We got our phones. We pass information on what our towns and cities are doing.
Okay.
Otherwise, that guy in Holyoke would never have been corrupted for being a political hack and killing 80 veterans. And those people stand out on the street corner. Just ask Mrs. Diana Close, who's also running for governor.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that name in the hat ring here. Who?
Well, she's been on the docket for running for governor for months.
All right.
This is Diana Close.
Is that the woman from Harvard?
Well, she used to live in Salisbury. Now she lives in Gloucester.
All right. My understanding is you got Jeff Deal throwing his hat in.
Yeah.
You got Ben Downing.
Yep.
You've got Danielle Allen, and Sonia Chang Diaz.
Yeah.
That's really it. I'm sorry, I haven't heard this woman's name before.
Well, and don't be we don't need any more communists and socialists in our government.
Right. All right. Well, Roger, this
Boston is a bona fide socialist.
Right. Well, what we're going to thank you for the call. I appreciate it. And Senator Moore, you've got 6,500, 6,400 bills or whatever it is. So, this comes up in front of you that says you need voter ID when you go to vote. If it satisfies the questions you have, like what do you count as an ID? And what provisions are in place to make sure that it's easy and no cost to get the ID?
Those are the two issues right now. The two issues I would have is making sure everyone had access to it.
Yeah.
And it's really that's it. Making sure everyone has access to whatever ID is going to be accepted.
So Teddy's decided he's going to hang with you today. Apparently.
Yes.
Okay. So he's relocated to literally in front, if you're not watching on TV, literally in front of the senator Teddy is just lay down and that's it. So, all right, buddy. No offense. I get it. You're with me all the time.
But so unless that bill's had a hearing,
Yeah.
which every bill is, we have a date in next year. I think the second week of February, every bill should have had a hearing. So I don't know if has this already gone through the election commission, through the election committee for a hearing. You know,
he's gone. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I thought
he's
he's
off
still
the
there.
line.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so he's not with us anymore. So I guess those are the things that well, you'll see it. I mean, it'll come up in front of you, and then the question, and you're making it clear right now on the record that your questions are what is the provisions made for access to the ID and the cost involved, and what do you accept? And those are fair questions.
Yeah,
those are fair questions.
And I mean, the last group of people you want to
alienate and give a static to are the elderly.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean,
all right, folks, we're going to wrap up the first hour here of the Saturday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show on the first Saturday of the month. That means after this break at 7 o'clock, Senator Mike Moore officially joins us in studio for Politically Speaking. 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. That's 508-871-7000. And our text line is 617-297-8388. I'm Joe Mangiacotti. Stick with us. Back on the other side.
WACE Chicopee and WCRN Worcester.
7 o'clock. Hey, folks, Joe Mangiacotti from the Joe Mangiacotti Show on AM 830 WCRN. Reminding you, talk radio is the immune system to the partisan, bias, political rhetoric attacking us on a daily basis. Get inoculated. The Joe Mangiacotti Show is your vaccine. Join me weekend mornings, 6 to 8. A wedding is a beautiful ceremony, and it is the most important day of your life. And if you'd like your wedding to be a memorable experience and one that your family and your guests will carry with them for the rest of your lives, I'd offer you to consider a Justice of the Peace. Justice Missy Margolis has been performing her duties for over 8 years for the sheer joy and pleasure of bringing other people happiness. Missy officiated my wedding ceremony, and she will work with you to create a perfect wedding ceremony that reflects your traditions, beliefs, culture, while showing the world the beauty of who you are. I've personally known Missy for nearly 40 years, and whether you have a complex or a traditional wedding, a quick modern ceremony, Justice Missy Margolis will make it beautiful. Missy can also do vow renewals and remembrances, ceremonies that include your children. She can perform a small, intimate ceremony to a large wedding any day of the week. Missy is truly a justice for all. You can call Missy directly at 508-735-8999. That's 508-735-8999. And of course, you can click ajusticeforall.com. Again, ajusticeforall.com. Hi, I'm Joe Mangiacotti, and you probably recognize me from the radio, or at least my voice, maybe from this station you're listening to now. And if you don't know, over my 30-plus years on the air, I've been best known for the real estate, mortgage, and financial talk that I've done. And what you may not know is that I haven't just talked the talk, but I've walked the walk. You see, I've been a licensed real estate salesperson here in the Commonwealth since 1984. And my very first venture into talk radio in 1986 was actually a real estate talk show. So I just wanted to remind you, or maybe inform you, that if you're considering selling or purchasing a property or looking to invest in income-producing property, consider having a conversation. You won't just be tapping the 3+ decades of my experience with marketing, purchasing, investing, and even being a landlord, but that of the countless experts and professionals that I've had the privilege of interviewing, working with, and learning from. Think of the vast network and contacts you'd have access to. So before making a move, make a call. You can click joerealtors.com, find me on Facebook at Joe Realtors, or email me at cameoproperty@gmail.com, or just call direct to my cell, 508-969-1088. That's 508-969-1088. And listen to Heidi Zizza and myself on Handling Change.
If you were to ask any retiree in a word, they would tell you that retirement is all about income. Income in retirement is a permission slip to enjoy life. Income provides the freedom to spend money each month, knowing that more will arrive next month and the month after that. As important as it is to accumulate assets for your retirement, it's equally, if not more important, to maximize the income being generated from your assets. My name is Jerry Doherty, and my radio program, Making Money Last, has been heard right here on WCRN. Well, do you know if your retirement income is as high as it could be? Are you living off less than you should be? Well, I'd like to offer you a complimentary review to answer that very question. Simply call my office at 877-772-1776. I'm conveniently located right on Route 9 in Westboro. Again, my number is 877-772-1776. Let's increase your income today.
Hey folks, Joe Mangiacotti here, and I have recently purged and refreshed with new furniture and, most importantly, a new bed. We spend about a third of our life on our mattresses, and it's so vital we have the right one, and we don't break the bank to do that. I first bought a mattress from the big store the brothers used to own, and a power base that moved the head and feet, and then I met John, and I checked out his showroom at 50 Main Street in Ashland and online at boxdropmiddlesex.com, and ended up with a better mattress, a power base that also heats and massages, all for less than half of what I was going to spend at the other place. Box Drop is a discount mattress store, and John specializes in clearance and closeouts, and he buys directly from the manufacturer with a low overhead and just family employees, passing the savings on to you, and you can see it reflected in the price every day. Click boxdropmiddlesex.com or call John on his cell. This is his cell number, 508-579-9303. That's 508-579-9303. And you can find John on Facebook at Box Drop Middlesex. John loves referrals, and this is the best referral I've given so far this year. Dropboxmiddlesex.com.
The spirit of Massachusetts is the spirit of America, the spirit of what's old and what's new. The spirit of Massachusetts is the spirit of America, the spirit of the red, white, and blue. The spirit of Massachusetts is the spirit of America, the spirit of what's old and what's new. The spirit of Massachusetts is the spirit of America, the spirit of the red, white, and blue.
All right, folks, welcome to Politically Speaking, the first Saturday of every month at 7 o'clock. We're joined by State Senator Michael Moore in studio as we turn our attention more specifically to Massachusetts politics and what's happening on Beacon Hill. Is it slip into the old Bacon Hill? Huh? Oh, is it? Bacon Hill is fine. There's a lot of pork up there. So, first of all, Senator Mike Moore, welcome back. Nice to see you in studio. I know with vacations and holidays and colds and COVID and everything, it's we haven't always been in person, but it's good to get a feeling back into normal here on the first Saturday of the month. 508-871-7000. Lines are open and available as we broadcast from our palatial but not overly ostentatious studios in Westborough, Massachusetts.
And about getting back to in-person things, it's nice that a lot of communities now are holding Christmas events in person and tree lighting ceremonies. So it's actually nice people are getting back out there again.
That's right. That's right. I mean, I'm starting to see the, that Facebook feed of events and stuff filling up again with actually in-person stuff, and not everything's the Zoom meeting. Here's the link, and that's pretty good stuff. I'm watching a lot of the Pride events that will be coming up in June are going back to in-person, and they were, virtual last year. That's happening with, and that's a good indicator of that because they're one of the first ones to go virtual. But overall, let me just ask in general, how is the state of the Commonwealth? How are we doing with our recovery and our economic status? And I know we've got a lot of, American Rescue Plan money that has come into the Commonwealth.
Yes, we've got quite a bit that hasn't come in that we are.
It's coming, baby.
It's coming.
Yeah.
We currently based with because of the COVID and all the federal money that came in, up until, well, I guess we still have it. We had $5 billion. And then if everyone remembered, when the COVID first hit, we were expecting a deficit.
Yeah.
All the economists told us, look at 6 to 7.
Sat right here. We talked about, you were a little afraid that we were going to have to spend all the rainy money fund and still be behind the eight ball.
And still be cutting programs
or
services. Well, rather than having a deficit, even the economists were surprised. We had a close to 1.5.
The economists were surprised?
Yeah.
Really? Because they're always right. They never get anything
like
wrong.
the weatherman.
Yeah.
But we end up having a $1.5 billion surplus. When I say a surplus, that means above what we thought was going to come in for revenue. And so what we did this past, I should say 2 weeks ago, before we broke for the formal session break over the holidays, we passed our version of an ARPA bill.
Mm-hmm.
So we took 2.5 billion of the 5 billion that we received from the feds. We took 2.5 billion of that, and we put it with the money that came in above expectations, which was 1.45 billion. we passed the relief bill. We passed it the end of November. Excuse me, the week before Thanksgiving. We all thought it would have been signed the following week. There were some issues with the conference committee, but they just released the bill yesterday. Well, excuse me, the House passed it, came to the Senate. We passed it informally yesterday. So now
Right.
it's gone to the governor's
So make
desk.
sure I have this straight. So we've got $2.55 billion in the ARPA funds.
Yep.
And we have the $1.45 billion, which was fiscal year 21 surplus,
Yep.
which was a very nice surprise because even though people were locked down, I mean, people were still not only either taking in their salaries or getting money from the federal government on programs. So we were still spending. I mean, my Amazon orders went through the roof during
Well, and I
quarantine.
think that's what surprised all the economists.
Yeah.
Everyone expected a downturn, and it didn't.
No, we had the money. We
Yeah.
kept spending it. So now
Oh,
we've got
and if you look at-
2.55 added to the 1.45 billion, and that gives us a heck of an economic recovery.
Right.
for-
So this is with monies from last year.
Yeah.
So next year we will have another ARPA,
Okay.
some form of ARPA legislation going through it, where we will have the other 2.5 billion that we haven't spent from the original allotment.
Yeah.
And then we're going to have, well, right now, if the revenues continue at the pace they're currently at,
Yeah.
excuse me, we could have another 1.5 to $2 billion surplus next year.
So not only I'm assuming that the state will replace the rainy day fund to make sure that's very healthy.
Well, we haven't had to use the rainy
All
day
right,
fund.
so maybe even fatten that up a little bit.
Yep.
What about giving a little relief? In other words, do we always have to spend the money that comes in? Can we just not create more programs or give a little tax break or a little relief someplace?
You could do that. We could do that with the surplus money.
Yeah.
Again, where we didn't expect that to come in.
Mm.
The federal money, we can't give a tax break based on the federal money.
Right.
coming in.
I know all that.
So-
I remember
so
that,
the
right?
state-
Because that was going to be, we give it. Oh, no, you can't use it that way. God forbid you should help the American taxpayer.
Well, this is where we have to, I think it was Ken from Bolton or someone was asking us a while ago, are we going to be putting money into transportation projects? A lot of many times when the money comes in from the feds, it's tied to certain policy areas. So we have to spend it in those ways, and sometimes they don't allow you to supplant money.
Yeah. All right, folks. Senator Mike Moore in studio with us. He does join us on the first Saturday of every month for what we call Politically Speaking in this hour. Direct access to Beacon Hill here. 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. Let me jump to the phones. People have been waiting patiently. First, we kick off with Mark in Worcester. Good morning, Mark. You're on with Senator Moore and myself, and you look marvelous.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, thank you. Is there any way your producer could turn up your volume on your end? I'm having a hard time hearing you speak on your end.
On my microphone. What's my VU level, Russ? I'm hitting it fine. You mean on the air or on the phone, Mark?
On the air, going out over your transmitter.
Russ,
Turn up the
pop me
the
up a little
volume.
bit, Russ. Yeah, okay. I thought I'm fine. Okay. Sorry, can you hear me now? Are you okay, Mark?
Yeah, I can hear you much better.
Okay.
Much better.
All right.
All right. I have a question to ask the Senator.
Yep.
Yeah, good morning, Senator.
Good morning. How are you?
Good. Remember Pearl Harbor?
Yep.
Coming up Tuesday,
Yep.
I believe.
Yep.
December 7th, 1941.
Sunday
We should all
morning.
remember.
Absolutely. The first bombs hit at 7:55 a.m. on a Sunday morning in Pearl Harbor. And, strategically, that actually was a fail for the Japanese because the majority of our carriers and frigates weren't in Pearl Harbor, thank God. So,
Thank God, yeah.
so they didn't get what they should have got. But 38 ships were either sunk or heavily damaged within 2 hours.
And 3,000 dead U.S. Navy sailors at the bottom of the drink. Can't forget them. That's what I'm
2,403.
talking about.
Yeah,
Huh?
2,403 sailors, servicemen, and women were killed that morning.
I thought it was 3,000.
Well, the
Anyways.
history books too. I have it in front of me, but that's yeah. But I
Okay,
don't know if that
well-
doesn't include civilians. Maybe there were another 800 civilians or so, 600 civilians that also perished. Mark.
They were all Americans.
Absolutely.
Anyways, the question I want to ask you, Senator, is if you have a number, how many, whether you want to call them foreign nationals, undocumented foreign nationals, asylum seekers, illegal border crossers, whatever you want to call them, have any of them made their way to Massachusetts?
I have no idea, and I don't know how we would have to get some report from the feds on what they have here. I know they.
So you have no idea. You don't know if it's 0, 100, 200, 300. You have no idea.
I can't tell you if someone snuck in if someone came in illegally through Mexico and then they somehow got up here, unless they were.
I have numbers. Hey, Mark, hold on a minute. I have numbers, and this is just, I'm taking this from a conversation and an interview from Political Thursday with Jerry Doherty and Holly, who joins us. There were 226,000 before the pandemic and before this past year. Another 118,000 illegal aliens in Massachusetts. So if you add 226,000 with 118, that's what's considered the number of illegal aliens within this Commonwealth.
What's the number?
It would be we have to add 118 plus 226. So let me do that. 118 plus 226,000 is 234. That's 344,000 illegal aliens in Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
And how did they get those
Holly
numbers
brought
from?
those numbers. She's a political activist, campaign manager, strategist, and all that. Those are the numbers she gave. That's why I qualified it. These are the numbers that were given during an interview and a conversation on this past Political Thursday show. So that's the number that seems to be accepted.
And also, if there's someone that has come into the country illegally, I'm sure if those numbers are correct, there's going to be additional ones that have not been
absolutely
identified.
It's like the getaway.
So if that number is correct, it's 300,000 plus.
Yes.
Well, that's 100,000 more than live in the city of Worcester.
Yeah.
Roughly.
Okay. Yeah.
So most of them, I would assume, are homeless, indigent, jobless. The list goes on.
I would
Who's taking care of them?
I would disagree with that. A lot of these people that come here are very hardworking people, and there's been,
I didn't say they weren't hardworking.
You just said they were
I
homeless and not working. So
how do you know? How do you know they're not homeless and not working?
they're very well maybe some that are homeless, but also you can't generalize.
Mark,
There's many of these people that have come here that work, that go out every day and work hard.
Can I jump in here for a second, Mark? And this is something else that I brought up on Thursday's show. Is people, just because they enter the country illegally, they're not necessarily homeless and wandering the streets. This is what they tend to do. What tends to happen is they have a information network where they reach out to or somehow are connected with Puerto Rican citizens, which is a territory of the United States. They lease their ID. They literally lease the birth certificate and a social security number, and that person's staying in Puerto Rico and they're doing their life, but they get this few $1,000s. The illegal then comes to Massachusetts or wherever, and they use that birth certificate and they use that social security number and they obtain their licenses and they work, because Puerto Ricans can work in Massachusetts anywhere. They're citizens of the country, right? They're a territory. So they don't have to do foreign papers or anything. And the thing about this is, and this is from an interview I did a long time ago.
I'm just a little curious. You're talking about if a individual is from Puerto Rico, they're a citizen, so they don't have to get fake IDs.
No, they're the real IDs.
Okay,
I'm saying
all
that
right.
the illegals coming, say, from South America, go and they lease these IDs off the Puerto Rican and pretend they're that person when they come to the mainland, and they use that ID, and it's a constant revenue for the Puerto Rican citizen, because say that illegal is working, and they probably, in all honesty, folks, they're probably working 2 to 3 jobs. And I seen this firsthand. My company had security contracts with a bunch of hotels, and so many of the people who worked in these hotels were Brazilian or Guatemalan or what have you. And my sister, who ran my guard service at one time, then became the auditor at a hotel. And she would tell me, this person who has worked for us for 18 months, 2 years, would come in and say, Maria doesn't work here anymore. Starting tomorrow, I'm Lupa, and this is my new Social Security number. Same woman, just changes her ID in the middle of working there. So now this becomes a multiple revenue source for the person in Puerto Rico, because when that illegal wants to say buy a car now, they got to pay them more money in order to let them get a loan and purchase a car under their ID.
Well, Joe, I don't know how that whole process you're talking about, but there are ways that they have that immigrants have obtained false tax numbers or social security numbers. So there is some fraud that's committed, but in general, the many times people seem to generalize that undocumented or illegal immigrants are just living off the system. A lot of them are very hardworking. They're out there, they're working jobs. And actually, when the Real ID went into effect, as everyone knows, after 9/11, the federal government mandated every state had to go to an official format for their driver's license. It was called the Real ID. And many of them couldn't get licenses and lost. And I'm not saying there's a bill for that, but there's many of them couldn't get licenses and actually lost their jobs. And we actually had employers calling, complaining, trying to get individuals a license or something so they could go to work for them. So they're very. I guess I'm just more concerned. There's a generalization that they're all living off the system.
Joe.
Yeah, Mark.
I'm still in the air. Senator, what about the children? How do they get jobs of these? If they're if their parents are here illegally and they have children,
okay,
how are they working? Who's paying for them to go to school? If they need public assistance, who's paying for that? Is it the taxpayers of Massachusetts? But you don't know that because you don't know if there's any in the state.
You asked me a very specific question, and I gave you.
You're going to play lawyer now? Okay.
No, I'm not going to play lawyer. I'm telling you. You asked me if I knew of any. I know that people that there are people here illegally. I don't know the exact number. I don't know that number where that Joe got it. But I know there are people. Every state's going to have some population of illegal immigrants or undocumented
Could you
people.
call a federal law enforcement like ICE and try to get the numbers off of ICE to try to determine how many are in the state or have made it to this state or some other federal authority?
We can check with the feds. We would have to call Senator Congressman McGovern, Senator Warren, and Senator Markey trying to get a number. I'm sure Massachusetts, there's maybe some estimate they have. But again, if someone's here illegally, there's going to be there will be many people who are not captured in that.
So in other words, that 336,000 could be more like 400,000.
Exactly. It could, because they're not going to be filling.
What about the Department of what do they call it? Transitional assistance.
Yeah, welfare department.
Are they? Is there any way that you can determine as a state senator whether the Department of Transitional Assistance is that you could go through their books and see who's getting these? If there are any illegal aliens, people undocumented, receiving public assistance from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, you can't determine that, or can you?
We can call DCF or Department of Transitional Assistance and find out. But if they are providing any sort of financial resources to illegal immigrants or undocumented, so we can do that. But but there's a misconception out there on what services undocumented people are getting. There's nowhere in
Well,
the
I
nowhere
think-
in the state does it say
Right.
that undocumented people are entitled to benefits.
No, it doesn't say that. It never did. Of course, it doesn't say that.
No, but there's an-
I think what people have a problem with is that they know, it's just common knowledge, that people have entered the country illegally. They obtain through fraud an ID or social security number, something that allows them to work. I know that for some reason, people would travel to Maine where they got a license, and then they would take these trips out to Ohio where somehow they got a social security number. I'm just going off of all of the interviews over the years I've done with Brazilians and people, Guatemalans and people that I knew in the Worcester area. And I asked them, tell me, I need to understand how you got this ID. How do you have a driver's license and you came over the border legally? This is what it was explained to me. So it doesn't ever say that anywhere. But I think what people have a problem with is that we know that there's just this tremendous amount of fraud being committed, and that they are, in fact, and there is a problem because a lot of people who are here with fraudulent IDs working may get, say, food stamps.
But that if anyone is receiving a benefit fraudulently by calling transitional assistance,
Right.
they are not going to have a list of.
No, I get all that.
No,
I think what they're asking you is,
I'm replying back to the caller.
Yeah.
So there's no list that they're going to have that's going to say, well, we have 300,000 undocumented people here.
Of course there isn't. Nobody's
And-
keeping
and
a list of
100
the
and-
fraudy people.
Well, that's
Yeah.
that's what I'm trying to get at.
Absolutely. I think the question is, what is being done to fix this? In other words, like the Bureau of Special Investigation, that used to be their totally function, but they've cut the one, investigative agency that I've always maintained that they are an agency that every investigator there could justify their salary probably within 60 days, probably 30 days. They could find enough fraud being, perpetrated within the Commonwealth to justify their $65,000 a year salary. Thank you, Mark, for the call. Always greatly appreciated.
But it should be input. But Joe, it should mention too. There's not just undocumented people out there who are committing fraud.
Mhm. Oh,
We have a lot of citizens.
Citizens have multiple EBT cards. Absolutely. Right.
But
And this is called a
everyone's-
drop. folks.
Everyone's targeting undocumented people as they're the ones who are causing all the
Well,
fraud.
I think
and all
it's salt to the injury when they're illegal to begin with. So they've already committed that crime to get in the country, and then they come here and they are perpetrating more crime. And then even more salt in that wound is they tend to send a great deal of money back to the country they came from, which, believe me, I am absolutely, nobody tell you what to do with your money. The problem people have is if you are here working illegally and you're taking money and then you're sending it back out of the country, you start stacking all of these little infractions that by themselves aren't such a big deal, but it bothers people when it happens. Are there American citizens, Massachusetts citizens, committing fraud and having multiple EBT cards? Absolutely. There are drops, right? And you find out that this one address, for some reason, 27 people tend to live there who have EBT cards. And then when we hear these things that when they tried to do the mass voter registration, so they mailed out to all of the EBT card recipients the voter registration thing.
that was by a lawsuit.
Yeah. And how many thousands came back undeliverable? And the question becomes, well, if it's undeliverable and they're not living at that address, why do we continue to put hundreds of dollars on their card every month when we don't even know where they really live? Right? That was another problem that people had. So we got to go to the phones. They're lit up here, 508-871-7000. Jeremy in Worcester first, immigration problem. We've got a couple of minutes. If we have to, we can hold you over, but let's see if we can get it done in 2 minutes. Jeremy, you're on.
Yeah, maybe you guys should frame your political arguments with once upon a time because they're all fables. The fact that they're hardworking people. What about the Harvard study about the dreamers who have not assimilated? 74% of them are on welfare. Okay? They don't assimilate, probably because of the Spanish culture, which is highly, Spanish is a language of entitlement. It always has been. That's why they almost killed Christopher Columbus. How dare an Italian tell a Spanish nobleman that he should work as hard as a peon?
I don't know where the
Jeremiah,
the
Harvard study, you've heard of it. You have heard of it.
Listen,
It went
first
against
of
your
all,
agenda.
calm down. If you want to talk, we're going to talk. I'm not going to be yelled at. Second of all, the Spanish language, or what did you say? Their language.
It's the language of entitlement. It has
that
been.
Look.
That is racist. No, it's not. It's history, is what it is.
It's not history.
It's not history. You guys confuse history with racism.
Thank you. Look if you want to call and talk about legitimate issues,
go ahead.
But to do what you're doing right now, I'm not going to get into debate with someone who's going to say just because someone speaks of a certain language, it's a language of entitlement. That's ridiculous. Thank you.
All right, Jeremy. Yeah, I got to agree with the center on this. You got to tone it down a notch or two. Happy to have the conversation, but it's a little insulting. 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. Russ, do we have enough time to take a call, or do we have to take the break and go over? Russ, you need to answer. Do we have enough time for a call, or should we have to go to break? We have to go to break. All right. So, George, Joanne, everybody on the phones, hold with us here. We're going to take a quick break here on Politically Speaking. Come back on the other side with State Senator Mike Moore. Let's keep ourselves in checks, folks. 508-871-7000 back on the other side.
It's the spirit of America, the spirit of what's old and what's new. The spirit of Massachusetts is the spirit of America, the spirit of the red, white, and blue. The spirit of Massachusetts is the spirit of America, the spirit of what's old and what's new. The spirit of Massachusetts is the spirit of America, the spirit of the red, white, and blue.
Good morning and welcome to Case Files from the LPDAM, where we take a look at the lessons from actual cases, the law behind the findings, and where we share the experiences of the experts of the Private Detectives Association of Massachusetts. Joining us this week is Sean Burke, current president of LPDAM and resident manager of Social Justice Advocacy Project and author of industry-related books. Good morning, Sean.
Good morning, Joe.
Well, listen, I thought I'd touch an area that is kind of in the news lately, and that's a bit of an understatement, but one of the biggest issues our society is facing today is addiction. How do you see its impacts on the next generation and generations to come?
Joe, I'd like to start by saying addiction is giving up everything for one thing, whereas recovery, on the other hand, is giving up one thing for everything. Addiction is a sad part of our society. The truth is, we do not value our youth to be proactive enough to curb or eliminate the drug flow into our communities. This is no knock on the reactive side of addiction, like the police or social workers who deal with the addictive personalities every day. I am talking about a real war on drugs, not a tagline spewed from our nation's capital. I am serious about identifying the core issue at its inception.
Sean, what do you think the core issue is with the majority of people using drugs, especially the first time?
Simply put, Joe, boredom. Trying to fit in is another top contender. So how can we combat the obvious? Be proactive in our communities. Truly hold individuals accountable for providing drugs to others. I am not talking about a slap on the wrist. I am talking about mandatory time in jail. We are talking about 8% of our population is lost in one form or another to drug addiction. They are no longer productive citizens, and oddly enough, it is an acceptable practice in America.
How could we change the current trend in America?
Joe, it is not as complicated as people make it. It will take time and years to curb the mentality or acceptance of drug use in the United States. However, it can be done by investing in our youth. Communities need to fix their parks, build facilities where our teens can thrive and be in a safe environment, a place where we can help people build their confidence in themselves. At our high schools, we need to change our approach with sports. For example, if we can field multiple competitive teams, then do it. Wouldn't it make sense to spend money proactively with sports rather than reactively with drug addiction? I can name high school after high school where they have large numbers at tryouts and only a few make the team. Many of the athletes' careers are over and they become bored. This boredom is dangerous and unnecessary in a country as wealthy as the United States. We have an institutional accountability to protect the next generations from the world of drugs. We need to value our youth more and invest in proactive measures to keep them safe from entering this dark world of drug use.
Sean, we certainly do have a higher responsibility to our youth.
Joe, I think it's time the world took LPDM's motto of "You're in good hands with LPDM." Wouldn't it be nice to hear the next generation saying, "You're in good hands with our government, our neighbors, our friends"?
Absolutely. It would be. Sean, thank you for stopping by Case Files.
Thank you, Joe.
And thank you for joining us for Case Files from the LPDAM. Join us here each Sunday morning on WCRN 8:30 a.m. and anytime online at lpdamcasefiles.com. You can visit LPDAM at lpdam.org. And of course, you can find LPDAM on Facebook and Twitter at PIN Mass and call anytime at 800-955-6274. For Sean, I'm Joe Mangiacotti. This Find a Forever Home for Teddy's Friends brought to you by Cantiani Insurance Group with 2 locations, Douglas and Worcester. Anytime at CantianiAgency.com. This week's candidate is a 1.5-year-old Siberian Husky and Collie mix, Stewie. Stewie is up for an adventure and is looking for a committed and loving family to call his own. Being a young, rambunctious dog, he still exhibits the same mouthy, jumpy behaviors that a young puppy would. He is a strong dog who will require a stronger leader to set a routine and provide daily exercise. He has been in homes with and without dogs, and at this time he needs to focus on training and how to appropriately act around other dogs long term. Stewie is part of our Foster to Adopt program, and his new family will need to complete training with our selected program. We want to ensure that this boy has everything he needs to have a fulfilling and wonderful life. If you would like more information about Stewie, or you would like to schedule an appointment to meet him, please contact the shelter. For the complete details and link, go to Teddy's Facebook page at Teddy Goodpop. Find a Forever Home is brought to you by Cantiani Insurance Group at CantianiAgency.com or call 508-791-2088.
Massachusetts is the spirit of America, the spirit of what's old and what's new. The spirit of Massachusetts is the spirit of America, the spirit of the red, white, and blue.
All right, folks, welcome back to the fourth and final segment of the Saturday edition. This is Now Politically Speaking with State Senator Mike Moore in studio. 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. That's 508-871-7000. A quick little research while we were on break, Senator. We found from the Harvard Gazette a study done in 2015 on measuring assimilation. I don't know if this is what Jeremiah was referring to, but we gave a quick read in the break, and I mean, it didn't. To me, it's not earth-shattering news here. It takes time to assimilate. No kidding. It also says that as each generation who is poorer than native born get less poor as the generations go on. Again, duh. But it doesn't seem to say they're not assimilating. I'm not seeing that in this study.
There's nothing saying that they're not assimilating. Nothing to say that they're non-working. There's not.
So what I am going to do is I am actually going to take this and throw it on my Facebook page, so that anyone who would like to read the article can read the article, and see where we're at from there, and then we can have a reasonable discussion at some point. 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. Who is next? Is it George? Joanne? Joanne. All right, so we're going to go to Joanne in North Brookfield. Joanne, good morning. You're on with Senator Mike Moore and myself, and you look marvelous.
Oh, good morning, Joe. Good morning, Senator Moore.
Good morning.
I know people are saying, "Oh no, not that spiel again," but I will tell you how it goes. And you know this, Senator Moore, perfectly well. The NGOs, and remember we were hearing them talking about NGOs during the summer, and I was so surprised that they were actually admitting to that. The NGOs, which is all taxpayer paid.
Right.
Now,
So let's Joanne, we got to make sure that listeners who may not understand what we're talking about, an NGO is a non-government organization.
Right.
And these NGOs are where all these, like all those thousands of people that were under the bridge and they got disappeared in the middle of the night and distributed throughout the country. They all end up in non-government organizations, to where how they're getting housed and fed and they're getting, set up. And that money is trickled down from these $1 trillion bills that were passed. So the NGO money, this is why months ago I was saying you got to step back and you got to look at this from 30,000 feet and understand there's multiple parts going on here. and that the NGOs are going to take care of all of the illegals that are coming in, and the tax money's being funneled to these NGOs through the relief bills and the trillions of dollars. So that's what you're saying, Joanne, to be right?
Yes.
Okay. So everybody
I
understands when she says NGO, she's talking about non-government organizations, whether it's Catholic charities or what have you, that are getting taxpayer money. This is how they're doing the actual facilitating. So when these people are being, sent all over the country, where are they going to? If they don't have an address to go to because of a family member, one of these organizations like Catholic Charities that has rented hotels, entire hotels out for them. That's where it's coming from.
We got a Century in Worcester that's they take a lot of they're dealing with a lot of the refugees that come to the country.
What in Worcester? Hotel?
A Century.
You mean
Centuria?
illegal aliens? Because what do you think?
The refugees
coming
coming from Afghanistan, or the
Oh yeah, well
those are
the
not.
ones
They're
that
not.
bum rush the plane are also, Anyway, so what I want to say is this money doesn't come from the NGOs. This money comes from the American taxpayers. Joe just laid out.
And there is also some there are also some of this government money that are coming from undocumented people that are working and that are paying taxes.
Please, what do you think that they get off the across the southern border and they go right to a job?
Why do you assume because they're undocumented?
Don't interrupt me, Senator Moore.
Why do you assume that if they're undocumented that they came from Mexico?
Don't be rude, Senator Moore. I'm trying not to be rude to you. And you keep interrupting me.
I'm just pointing out a fact
that all taxpayer paid. The people at the NGOs are taxpayer paid. They get all. I was sitting right there in one of them. The landlords come in. They sign up to get their rent paid by the taxpayers. Then they go to English as a second language, and those people are retired administrative teachers that are now on a second row. They get paid by the taxpayers, and a lot of them are all on welfare. They're obviously women are having children. They're not going to go working at IBM or anything like that. So it's all taxpayer paid, and you know that perfectly well.
There are taxpayer money that are going to programs. If you're an illegal or if you are undocumented, you are not entitled to governmental services.
No, that's not true. There are lawyers, young lawyers, right on the staff that would get them their green card.
If they get a green card, they're not. Then it's not. They're not an illegal person here.
Right. The green card does transfer the legal status to be here into work. So if they have a green card, they are immigrants, but they're no longer illegal, Joanne, right? We agree on that. I mean, if they get the green card, they get the green card. But you're saying that they come here illegally and then taxpayer money is being funneled to all these NGOs and paying the tab for these lawyers and so forth so that they can flip to being legal after committing the crime of illegally entered the country.
Yeah,
Did I get the gist of it?
Yes, the airplane from the southern border is paid for by the taxpayers. They land at, let's say, the Boston airport. When they come here, they get picked up by these people working for these NGOs, and everybody is getting paid by Uncle Sam. Everybody, the people that work there, the landlords, the food stamps, the English as a second language teachers. And when I worked at the English as a second language one, there would be people that wouldn't come to classes, so they would be threatened. We're going to shut you off of your welfare check if you don't come to the, and they would just blow them off or whatever. And so it's all being paid by the taxpayers.
So the people that were going to the English as a second language programs, those are all undocumented or illegal, in your opinion, or are they here on green cards?
Well, like Joe just said, they come here illegally. They're paid for. Everything is paid for.
That is
Once
not-
they get there, it's set up for them to get whatever they need, all on the taxpayer dime. I don't know about the intricacies, and but I worked at several of them, so I know what I'm talking about.
Okay.
And
Thank you.
All right, John, thank you. Yeah, makes some valid points there. I think the thing here, Senator, is, do you sense the level of frustration that people have?
Yes, but there's also a level of frustration that is, there are perceptions out there that are not valid, that are not true, and quite a few of them keep getting spun and
Right.
perpetuated.
So
and
let's address those.
But you can't, Joe. There's some that you're gonna try to address, and there are individuals that are not going to take that. Just like this, you have someone calling.
I get that, but now we're here. You have a microphone. Thousands of people are listening. We got the largest footprint of a radio station in Massachusetts. Take a couple of seconds because we got full lines, so we got to go. All right, we'll go back to it.
No,
Because
I don't
your
like
microphone.
what do you want me to?
To say exactly that, saying, look, there are illegal people and they break the law, but we don't officially allow people who are committing fraud to do it.
But Joe, that has been stated on this show many times,
100%.
many times, and there is a perception out there,
right,
from
that you
the
just can't
callers
seem to convince them. I get it.
Just don't.
All right, 508-871-7000, folks. Let's
no
go
matter
to
what we say. They're going to still have their beliefs.
Absolutely. So we have to look. The purpose of this show has always been to offer a microphone to everybody for something to say, but also to convey information, accurate information, the truth that's going on, and people. And I don't care how many safeguards are placed in. Both Native Americans who were born here and people who come here illegally are always going to break the law. They're always, look at when we were giving out all these loans. The COVID hit. We had the business,
the PPP.
The PPP. Most of the fraud committed in the PPP were American businessmen who said, "Well, this seems like a good opportunity to get lost in the mix and let me get a little money off the feds." And how many people how many people got away with it? We don't know, probably a lot, but we did arrest and prosecute a lot of fraud for that money. So the point being, you don't have to necessarily be an illegal immigrant to break the law and commit fraud in the United States. I think what people have a problem with is if they weren't allowed in the first place illegally, they wouldn't be here to break the other laws.
Well, I guess I don't know if you're saying they're here illegally, then they're not being allowed into the country. So
no, wait a minute. If they're here illegally, it means they got into the country illegally.
But that doesn't mean government sanctioned them being.
No, but they're not doing the right thing to stop it either. A border is basically porous.
Oh, listen, I agree. We need a massive, comprehensive reform of our immigration system.
Yeah, and we need to, the stupidity of stopping to build the wall, which was just about complete. So you've got miles and miles of wall and then a hole.
The only issue I have there is some people seem to think that just building the wall is going to correct an immigration problem.
But it helps. It's a wall.
But there are individuals who seem to think that wall, which
is cure-all. No, it's not the cure-all. But there was no reason to stop it. That was just political because Trump started it. That's it. And now it's costing taxpayers $5 million a day not to build the wall. And the stuff is rotting out in the middle of the desert. It's asinine. 508-871-7000. George in Shrewsbury has been waiting patiently. George, thank you for holding on, man. Good morning.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
One is pretty good at twisting up arguments. So I think I have a straight yes or no question.
Okay.
In the state of Massachusetts, do you give college tuition to undocumented illegal aliens?
We do not give in-state tuition to undocumented aliens. There has been a bill to do that. I don't know, 8 years for the last 8 years, and that has not passed the legislature. That would be to provide. That would be the legislation would be to provide the in-state tuition costs to basically would be to the dreamers, the kids that have gone to school here in this country. in the state.
Wow, a yes or no answer from a senator. I must be something special. So you guys?
No, not really. Not really. It's just if people listen,
yes,
they get an answer.
Really. You've been taking everything this morning and twisting it around the other way. So you have the money, obviously, if you're trying to get it, to give the college tuition to the illegals. I'm wondering, as a truck driver that comes through your state, how you can think you have money enough to do that. But when I go to the rest areas in Chelmsford and like that, you haven't got any facilities. You just got porta potties out there. How can you not afford to give these things for people that are paying for this stuff, but you think you got money enough to give the others to the illegal aliens? You guys are just crazy down here. It's unbelievable.
Well, first of all, I don't know how, I don't know, by coming back with a different opinion is considered twisting the argument. There is information that is being brought forth that is not correct. And I don't think replying back with an appropriate answer is considered spinning it.
Let's take your last thing on the wall. The host says the wall is something that could help fix the problem. And you say, oh no, everybody thinks the wall is the only thing that they need. Just twisting it up.
That's not twisted, because that's
absolutely twisting it up.
Because that's what a lot of people seem to think, is they focus on the
That's
wall.
what a lot
The
of people
wall is
seem to think. Geez,
the wall
that's
is not
a real,
the wall
that's
is not
a real factual answer you just gave.
The wall
a lot
is
of
not.
People seem to think
that a lot of people seem to think that that's going to cure the whole immigration problem. It's not.
Yeah. It's part of the host is Joe, by the way. So just Joe Mangiacotti.
And look, if you want to call up and just spout different philosophies just because that's your philosophy, fine. But this is part of the problem we have with politics today, or the governing. No one's willing to listen, and they come back. And just because I'm coming back with an opinion, I'm spinning something politically. It's not the case. Some of the information that's being put out here is not correct.
Okay. George, thank you for the call. I just got to hold you there only because the phone lines are just jammed and we got to try to move through them. Next is Ken in Bolton. Ken, good morning. Hold on a second, Ken. What's that? You want to reset?
Reset.
Okay. Take a second.
No, the opera legislation that the state passed.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we were going to be talking about here today. There was $3.8 billion in resources that we have between state and federal funding.
Which is great that we have that surplus and that we have that ARPA money.
Two of the main funding priorities. One was $500 million of that money that is being put towards paying essential workers bonuses. Those are the frontline employees.
That I have not heard about. That's $2,000, right?
Yep,
for worker. And now, who qualifies as essential?
That would be the people. You could have some of the CNAs that are out there working that have to take people that have to be out there and don't have the choice.
I think, first of all, I think that's fantastic, right? Because we would, they'd hit the pots at 4:00 every afternoon, and you say, this is wonderful. During the pandemic, I talked about this going down to Price Chopper, and here's the people filling the shelves, right? Nobody's talking about them. They went to work when we didn't know anything about the virus, right? We didn't know how bad it really was or how it worked, and these people went out there, and that's good. These people are going to get a bonus because they did their job, which I know people are going to argue, well, that's their job. Well, you know what? They really didn't have to go. They could have said, I'm not risking my life going to stock shelves at the grocery store. They could have done that, and they could have taken the unemployment checks, but they didn't. So you know what? A couple $1,000 bonus to these people, I'm okay with that.
So that's one of the main funding priorities that was in this. The other is we had talked about the Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund.
Yes.
Right now, it's said to be anywhere between $6 to $7 billion in the red. So that money is going to have to be made up back into the trust fund. Well, we are taking $500 million of these funds, and we are diverting it to pay into the Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund. So those are two major priorities that were part of this. I've got 3 pages of different other funding programs that were funded with the bill. We got $150 million going to housing and home ownership. That's dealing with affordable housing. There's also money for the Soldiers Home in Chelsea. I know that was brought up. We've got $400 million in money going to mental health and behavioral health programs. We're also including $122 million for workforce loan repayment programs to try to incentivize people to go into those type of careers, because we have a real shortage of that in the state. We have another $300 million that's going to be going into home and community-based workforce needs for those in vulnerable populations. We have another $200 million going into regional public health. I know this may or may not be a popular topic on this show. But we've got
how the money's being spent.
No,
I think that's good information.
Oh no, I'm just saying this next topic.
Oh, okay.
Climate preparedness.
Oh, okay, all right. I got
So
it.
you
were preempting.
Yes, yes,
got it.
So I know we have a lot of people that don't believe in climate change and are resistant to those types of.
Let me say this on climate change. There are going to be people who think it's all not one of those. Climate change. If you don't think that the everything's impacted by fossil fuel, you're wrong, right? I mean, we put smoke and carbon into the air, of course, right? We've been doing it for decades, hundreds of years now. Even before we had fossil fuels, we were deforesting our country, right? We cut down every tree in sight, right, just to heat our homes and so forth. So it's always been happening. I think the problem is, or where the disconnect comes, is when you're told, if we tax you more, that somehow is going to fix this, or we're going to put the United States at a disadvantage, but we're not going to do, because we can't do anything about China or India, who are bigger polluters than we are. They can continue to do whatever they want, but we're going to tie American businessmen's hands behind their back and tax you to death. And our philosophy is to force you to buy an electric car. We're going to cause pain through gas prices and other punitive taxes. That's, I think, what people have the problem with, opposed to let's use a carrot and not the stick.
Well, first, there has to be some incentives to try to get people to transition.
Incentive, not punishment.
Right. So there has to be some incentives to get people to transition over. It's going to take a long time to transition over to renewable and
I've always said this, right? We've had combustion engines for 120 years. Let's put 120 years into battery research. You see what I'm saying? If for the last 120 years, instead of building combustion engines, we stayed with Henry Ford actually wanted an electric engine to begin with. It was the powers to be who wanted him to use this oil because they owned it all, right? So they kind of forced the car industry to go combustion engine. But say we didn't. Say we did start in 1889, we started to perfect the electric car, i.e. the battery. If we had 120 years or 30 years of research and technology, don't you think we'd have batteries today that could go 1,000 miles on a charge? Probably, right?
Well, there's nothing to say businesses couldn't, as they're doing now.
Right, because now we're pushing and we're going green. But what I'm saying is we're not there overnight. So let that transition happen at a respectable pace, and don't punish people because they don't have $58,000 to go out and buy an electric car. They make it sound like Pete Buttigieg, the Secretary of Transportation, said the other day, well, if you just bought an electric car, you'd never have to worry about the price of gas again. You don't think that's a little out of touch?
Well, it's out of touch in the fact there's not enough first, the cost of electric
and not
vehicles,
everybody can afford it.
The cost, and then there's the car companies are not manufacturing them at the rate that we'd be able to do it.
The demand hasn't been there.
Just a natural transition from the dealers, the Ford, the car companies putting models out there. It's going to take a substantial amount of time to transition over to these new types of vehicles. So with this, we have $100 million going for water and sewer infrastructure investments. Then we also have another $100 million for environmental infrastructure grants. We've got and the other $90 million was passed to support marine port infrastructure investments. We got another $100 million going into improved air quality in public schools. just trying to look for the big budget items. And then we got 115 million going to the Commonwealth Builder Program to support housing production and promote home ownership. Then another 150 million into affordable rental housing. We got I think I said $200 million going into local boards of health. We got another 44 million that are going to food insecurity programs.
So the $7.5 million for community college to help train underserved populations for green jobs. What does that mean? And who do they consider, underserved populations in community colleges? And what are the green jobs that they're preparing them for?
The underserved populations would be the minority populations or people in I don't have
lower economic.
Low economic.
Okay.
I was trying to, we usually have a threshold. We use 300% of the certain income limits. I don't have that in front of me. What the percentage is used?
So it'd be the low income or people of minority status.
Correct.
In community colleges.
And the community colleges should be working. They should be working with the clean energy or renewable energy type industries to create programs that are going to feed people from the program right to the industry.
We're like incredibly out of time.
Okay.
All of a sudden. So even though phone lines are filled, I'm sorry, folks, we're not going to get to it. The senator we needed to cover some of this material. That will wrap up this week's edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show and Politically Speaking with State Senator Mike Moore. I'll be back tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. for the Joe Mangiacotti Show. Mike Wade at 7 for Conservatively Speaking. Peter Blue taking us to 12 noon tomorrow. Thank you very much. And don't forget, you can find everything on my social media platforms. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday, folks. Joe out.